Hello everyone, welcome to Focus Talk. Last Thursday, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence delivered a major policy speech on China. This speech triggered a strong reaction among Chinese. Many seem to think that the speech signals a major change between U.S.-China relations. Today, we invite Dr. Jason Ma to share with us his view on this. Thank you, Jason, for coming here.
Thank you for your invitation.
Yeah. So what do you think of Vice President Mike Pence's speech?
In the sense of the content, I personally think there's nothing new. But in the sense of a tone, in the sense of kind of the angle of the speech and the everything, I think was the perfect way to address this important relationship between China and the U.S. I think especially what impressed me is his whole talk is a very, I think, with a lot of material and also example to support his statement, and also in a very unique way, he addressed a lot of kind of China. Instead of using China or Chinese people, he was using Chinese Communist Party.
Yeah, he said it 7 or 8 times.
I think that is a key deviation from the previous U.S. government official when they address China or Chinese issue. I mean, this time clearly he differentiating what is the China, what is the current the party which is controlling China. Yeah.
It's interesting that you said that he used a lot of facts and examples, because I see in the Western analysis that some of them think he made strong claims, but he didn't give enough facts or enough substantive proof to support his claims. So you don't think the same way?
No, definitely not, because it's probably, I mean, some Western kind of journalists, they consider themselves as like the expert about the Chinese issue or something, but when you really read their articles, they are surprisingly superficial in many different ways, and you can see recently in like generally speaking, a lot of those journalists, they don't really have deep understanding of East Asian kind of history, all the subtle relationship between different countries, and especially they don't understand what is the kind of the major difference between the Chinese Communist Party coming to power in China in 1949, and what is China before that, what is China after that. And so they are saying this, I think it's just a reflection of their lack of the in-depth knowledge about Chinese and issue and with Chinese and U.S. relationship. For me, when I read and also listen to what Pence said, I think almost every sentence I have some kind of knowledge or history facts echoed with that sentence, including what he's saying about from the very beginning when both countries first established. I mean, of course not China. It's more like the U.S. when they first established as a kind of independent country. They begin to seek market, and so Chinese people begin to welcome U.S. The ginseng and the fur, and as a market for the U.S. people. And then talking about they fight together during World War II. I mean, also talk about all the kind of the recent Chinese Communist parties. It's a way to kind of try to influence the world. I mean, everything, I think there are facts. There are one kind of a news fact to support it. I just kind of feel surprised, like some Western scholars even saying like Pence was claiming a lot of things without substance to support. I mean, every sentence I do find many different kind of news or facts to support what he said. Yeah, that's the reason I think that's a very, very kind of nice, and also I said I never think anything is brand new to me, because I do understand what he's saying.
Yeah, a lot of things he said, even we talked about in our Chinese focus talk, like the Chinese Students Association.
Right.
So what do Chinese think of his speech, both overseas and inside China? Tell us a bit.
Of course, first of all, I mean, if you talk about the Chinese, I don't know whether you include the Chinese officials or not.
I think mainly two separate groups. The one group who can read or see the free world information, whether they're here or they're inside China, but through the anti-block software. The other group are mainly people in China who maybe have like a lack of information resource.
Right. I mean, from first of all, the people who have access to the media outside China. So indeed, that's my habit. Whenever I read or listen to some very important China-related news outside of China, I will go to some major kind of website outside overseas. The Chinese call it overseas website to read what's the readers' feedback. I read the feedback from Voice of American VOA, and also read the feedback from Epoch Times, and so what is surprising me is almost 90% of the feedback was very, very supportive. I mean, they basically saying like, wow, this is something we have been saying for years, and finally a U.S. Vice President is beginning to say that.
I see something, someone said, finally U.S. wakes up.
Yeah, I mean, so basically kind of, this is kind of, it's not surprising because as I said, what Pence was saying is nothing new. It's a kind of purely based on facts and historical kind of facts. But what about the people inside China? I also kind of, there's no official survey. I mean, of course, the Chinese government even trying to stop Chinese people from knowing the whole speech. Yeah. So they delete almost all the posts with the speech, and they only have their official kind of like opinion. They on their kind of like People's Daily, their kind of official newspaper, at a corner, not on the major place, at the corner, they just put their rebuttal. It's kind of pretty empty, pretty meaningless, like rebuttal over there. But what I can see is like Chinese people is indeed eager to learn what Pence was saying. So that's the reason I kind of heard a number of my friends by kind of different channels, they somewhat get some piece of the Pence talk.
Oh, not the full speech,
not
but
the
part
full
of
speech.
it.
Just some kind of segments or some kind of piece of recording, those kind of thing. And their overall kind of feeling is they just feel like U.S. became serious now. And they of course, they worry about what's the consequence to their daily life, but I don't see anything negative. They never say, wow, like your Chinese government, I mean, Chinese Communist Party is saying like, oh, all the claim was baseless. I mean, we never interference with U.S. kind of policy or politics, and we are busy with our own things. His claim is baseless. Oh, none of them was saying this kind of thing. They all somewhat agree what Pence saying is correct, but they are somewhat worried about what's the future relationship between these two major kind of countries in the world. Yeah.
Would you describe your friends as like the middle class Chinese people who kind of like well educated, also like well-rounded in terms of lifestyle, even if maybe has some access to the external information source?
Yeah, because at this moment, as you said, of course, the Chinese definition of middle class is kind of different from U.S. definition of middle class. U.S. definition is basically kind of make sure the top incomer are not considered as middle class. Yeah. And but in China, middle class is more like the people who can have like income at the top 25% of people. Oh. I mean, so because people, China do have a huge amount of relative kind of poor population, but even like 20% or 30% of the Chinese population is about the population in U.S. For those group of people, they already get used to a kind of a relative kind of new lifestyles. they are thinking about travel outside the US, China, and also they are thinking about sending their kids to US school. They are thinking about these kind of things. So, and also they are thinking about potential kind of investment outside China, for example, US. So for them, this kind of talk was kind of may have direct impact with their current plan.
I see.
Yeah. So for them, they are kind of a little kind of concerned in some sense, but overall, I still think they are somewhat positive in the way of in the past several years they will feel surprised. I mean, because of the ideology in China is turning dramatically to the left. The right now the Chinese Communist Party put the communist ideology almost at every corner of Chinese people's life.
Wow.
And then they just feel this kind of uncomfortable feeling about the current situation.
Anxiety.
And then they do feel like, okay, finally there is a power, although it's not their own government, anything within China, but there is a powerful person or powerful kind of government stand up against something they really don't like, the current Communist Party regime or government. So from this sense, they feel like a little kind of cheerful in some sense. But meanwhile, they feel like, what about my son? I mean, can my son still go to US?
Go to China too.
Go to US for his kind of education, something like that.
Yeah, wow, that's very interesting. I think it's really insightful observation. It's good to know how they really feel. It seems like they have a really rational reaction,
right,
so to speak. Okay, so lastly, in the speech, Vice President Pence said that previous administrations gave China access to the economy of the free world in the hope that freedom in China could expand in all of its forms, not just economically, but politically. But that hope has gone unfulfilled. So in other words, the engagement policy that U.S. has adopted toward China in the past 46 years failed.
Right.
Why do you think it failed?
Oh, I think it's just like I think there was a book called China Fantasy. I mean, basically kind of after the 1989, they called it the Tiananmen Massacre. And a lot of kind of a country back off from interaction with China. But quickly, within a year, they come back. They basically begin to have interaction with China again. And at that moment, I think the whole world is buying a theory. The theory is, first of all, economic freedom will bring political freedom. Second is only when you engage, then you can influence them. So that's kind of, I think about later in 2008 or 2010, there was a book called China Fantasy. Basically, they kind of revisited this kind of assumptions. End up, people realize that none of assumptions was true for China. I think there is a major factor they didn't realize. And when Pence was talking about the good relationship or the fighting together with China, he was talking with, in the sense of the normal Chinese government, no matter if it was Qing dynasty, empire, or kind of
the Kuomintang,
Chiang Kai-shek, and the Kuomintang, and all of those governments, I call that normal government because they were not created by a crazy ideology. They were basically kind of, they naturally grow inside China and then build on some kind of Chinese tradition kind of thinking. But Chinese Communist Party, they came to power in 1949, and they totally have a different ideology. I mean, that is against all the belief.
So you're talking about communism.
So Confucius said a very important sentence: don't attempt to work with people whose Dao is not your Dao.
I'm sorry, say it again.
Whose way is not your way.
Oh.
So basically, in Chinese, basically is 道不同不相为谋. I mean, this is the basically kind of this is kind of something. It took 25 years for the U.S. government to finally realize there is no way for Chinese Communist Party is aggressively kind of pushing their ideology, and meanwhile you think you can influence them. The fact is that the Chinese Communist Party is influencing the world with their growing power in economy. So I think the key point of Pence talk is engage. We should not engage Chinese Communist Party, but meanwhile we should keep engaging Chinese people as a people or as a traditional culture. So I think that's my major take from his talk. And also, I hope Chinese people can get it and then somewhat kind of relax about the major kind of policy regarding education. I don't think U.S. will change that part, but all those people who have a close relationship with the Chinese Communist Party may begin to worry about their position in U.S. Yeah.
So don't even think about changing the communism. All right. Well, thank you very much, Jason, for coming here. And thank you, everyone, for watching. And we hope you continue to watch and support Focus Talk. Thank you.